Hello and welcome to another edition of Redleg Roundtable. I am so excited today to welcome in Bip Roberts. Bip, thanks so much for joining me.
Well, it's good to be here, Seth. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. I don't know how if you know how much you were loved when you were with the Reds. It was a short time. We're going to get to that shortly, but my goodness, it was an exciting time to watch you play. So thanks so much for joining me.
Well, thanks for having me. And, I remember a lot about that short period of time and how just enjoyable it was to play in front of the fans there and how much love they showed me, especially after that one time when I ran into the wall in Atlanta and then I was able to come back and play. And I'd never had a standing ovation when I walked towards the plate like that before. So that's something special and it's something that I will never forget.
Awesome. Well, hey, I start every time with the guest saying, talking about when you were born and where you grew up. So you were born actually Leon Roberts, I believe, October 27th, 1963 in Berkeley, California. Tell me how you got the nickname Bip.
Well, when you're little kids, you try to pronounce words and sometimes they just don't come out right. So apparently we had something for dinner and I wanted some more. And I asked instead for a bit more. I asked for a bip more. And
Okay.
so when you're raised in a family where you have like 5 aunts and a bunch of uncles, they kind of take that stuff and run with it. So I was Bip after that.
Wow, that's awesome. And to think it kept going. Sometimes a nickname from sports comes from later on, but you carried that pretty much your whole life, didn't you?
My whole life until the point where when I started school, the kids in my neighborhood, they called me Bip. And so after a while, the teachers kept asking, who are you talking about? Who, Leon? And then
Yeah.
they kept saying, no, that's Bip. And so eventually it just caught on and it just stuck.
Well, that's awesome. Now, you went to Skyline High School in Oakland, California, and I want to talk a little bit later about Oakland because I know you're still out there now. But you get drafted by the Pirates in the 5th round in 1981, but you decided to go to what was it, Chabot College? Is that how you pronounced it?
Yeah, first I went to UNLV and
Okay.
lifting weights, developed a hernia, had to go back, have surgery. And so it was 10 games left in that season. And my high school coach, Joe Piniella, said, hey, Don Christensen is out at Chabot. We'd like you to go out there and play the last 10 games, start to get your feet, get your feet back up out of you. So I went out there for 10 games and then got redrafted by the Pirates.
Yeah, they took you again, this time in the 1st round in 1982. When you were drafted in 81, how did you come to the decision to go ahead and forego that and go on to college? What was that decision like?
Well, through high school, my coach, Joe Piniella, he'd always kept pushing me towards going to Cal Berkeley. So he had me in certain classes that I had to go to. And I was just like, wow, coach, my senior year, I just want to play baseball. But he's like,
Yeah.
no, we've been on this course since you got here and let's finish it out. So, once I got drafted, I was only 17 years old. So I was thinking, man, I still got a little more time to grow up. I still want to hang out at the house and get mom's cooking. And so I don't think I was ready at 17 to get drafted and go play against grown men.
Mm-hmm. Well, so what was it like though? Those first couple years with the Pirates organization, what was it like going through the minor leagues back then? Certainly not even close to probably some of the nicer stadiums they have now across the country for the minor leagues. I'm sure it was quite a slog, wasn't it, for you to go into that situation?
It was different, the first day I get down to Bradenton, Florida, where they had Pirate City, I'm walking towards the phones to see so I can go call mom and say, hey, I made it down here. But all I hear is Spanish. And I'm like, well, where am I right now? I
Yeah.
don't know where I am. And so I got on the phone with her. She said, no, those are the kids from the Dominican. And I said, well, how do you know that? But she knew that. I didn't know that. But, I was in Bradenton rookie year for maybe 10 games, if that. Then they sent me up to A-ball in South Carolina and finished out the season there for like maybe a month or so. Didn't do too well as far as trying to adjust to the lights and the minor league type of baseball. And so I went back home and said, you know what, that's not going to happen again. I came back. I dominated that league, hit over 320, had about 80 ribbies, stole 50 bags, made the all-star team, and then just kept going up the ladder each year, just trying to do my thing and trying to make sure that I caught the eye of the right person that could continue to move me up. And so it was just a journey. Once you're on the journey, you put your head down and you just go to work. And so that's what I did through the minor leagues.
That's awesome. It sounds like with your high school coach too, and some other folks, it sounds like you were pretty well prepared to work hard. Now, it doesn't happen all that often that a guy gets picked in the Rule 5 draft, and then, you were still very young in 1985. The Padres took you in the Rule 5 draft, and that was December of 85. And then so that meant the 86 season at age 22 season, you had to stay with the big league team or they'd have to give you back to the Pirates. I guess we'll talk a little bit about you had some success, but what was that like to be thrust into that like that? You never played above Double A, and here you are at 22 going to the big leagues.
Yeah, I just never felt like myself. I always felt nervous. I always felt anxious. I always felt like, am I prepared enough? And then so what happened was that year, I started that year off 0 for 28. And so right now I'm already in the hole at 22, Rule 5 and pressing. But I was able to fight back up out of that. I got up actually over 300 at one time.
Wow.
But at that time, our manager was platooning me back and forth with Tim Flannery. He's had me hit mostly right-handed. And then when I got hot, he let me play. And then when I cool off a little bit, he kind of started platooning me again. Didn't allow me to continue to progress and grow. But I think that was a learning year for me, mentally, physically, just trying to understand where I fit in the game. I came in a little brash and cocky, thinking that I could go in from Double A and do the same things. But the big leagues is a totally different animal. They find your weaknesses, they exploit it. One of my weaknesses was that I couldn't hit the ball hard the other way. And so they just exploited that weakness. But I had some good teammates. Gary Templeton was just awesome. The captain, as we called him, took me aside after the season was over and broke my swing totally down to where I could use the entire field. And I could understand what Tony Gwynn was talking about, because the first year he was talking to, I didn't know what he was talking about. He's showing me swings and what is that? I don't know what that is. But once I worked with Gary Templeton, I was able to have those conversations with Tony. I understood what he was talking about. I actually worked with Tony for about 6 years there to continue to work on my swing. And I just learned a lot from those guys. They my first year being hard-headed, Tony was a little hard on me, but after he understood that, I am listening to you, I just have a hard time understanding what you're saying. But once I got a chance to really understand what he was saying, we became pretty good friends.
I heard a story one time that I think it was Pete Rose was at the All-Star game and Ted Williams was there as a coach or something like that, and he came up and started talking hitting to him, and Pete said he went into the longest slump of his career after the All-Star break because here Ted Williams had given him all this mumbo jumbo that he didn't really understand. But hey, give you credit, man. 22 years old, you hit 253, and having never played above Double A, that's pretty amazing. Let's talk about this right now, though. Like you mentioned, Tony Gwynn, he's since passed, but what was it like to play with him? And you've already mentioned a little bit about the hitting side, but he seemed like a consummate pro. Was that kind of who he was?
He was a grinder. I mean, he's there early. He leaves late. But in that time period, he went out and worked hard. I watched him. He'd go out, he'd get on the tee, he'd soft toss, and he'd take extra batting practice. Then he'd go back in and get prepared for the game. And I just watched him. I said, you know what? If that's what he does, I'm going to follow that lead. And so that's what I would do. I would go out, get on the tee. I didn't really soft toss. And sometimes you had to be Tony Gwynn in order to get extra BP. So, I wasn't Tony Gwynn. So I would just, I would do my tee work and then I'd go into batting practice. But I was still trying to get my extra work in. Now, my number wasn't 19. I was number 10. But number 19 got to do whatever he needed. And whenever he needed extra BP, he was able to get it. But the thing about Tony was just his discipline and how he really understood who he was facing. Tony Gwynn could tell you who we were going to face 2 weeks from the day that we were playing. He knew exactly the lineup or the rotation we would face, and he would always let us know, hey, we're going to face these guys. They're coming up. We're going to face these guys when we go on the road. He just knew all of that. So he always did his homework. He was almost literally 3 or 4 steps ahead of all of us. But the thing about it was that anytime you needed to go talk to him about some things, he could really help you with your swing. Like Gary Templeton was the same way. These guys understood exactly what you do. And that's something Tony would always say, just do what you do. Don't worry about what anybody else is doing. Just do what you do, and then you'll have success.
Yeah, those stories are just priceless. Even you think about the Dave Parkers of the world that helped out Eric Davis and Barry Larkin. And just it goes on down the line. Now, how tough of a pill was it to swallow the next pretty much 2 full seasons? You played 5 games in 88, but 87 and 88, you're back down in AAA. Was that a bitter pill to swallow at first?
Wow. You go from the big leagues back to the minor leagues. Now, that spring training after that season, the 86 season, I went to big league camp. And because what Gary had taught me over the wintertime, I was now an actual big league hitter. But it was already in the plans that Joey Cora would be the second baseman. And right behind him was this kid named Roberto Alomar.
Yeah.
So the line was getting pretty long there. But I had a good spring. I hit the ball well and everything. But that one day I hit a home run, stole a base, had a great game. They called me and said, we send you back to AAA. And I was just like, wow, really? So, you go back to AAA and you try to fight your way back. And I hit over 300, but no call up. And so the following year, I didn't go to big league camp. I went to minor league camp. I was sitting there in a uniform that didn't even match. So I was back in AAA and started that season in AAA and wasn't even playing. And so I was sitting on the bench. Roberto was starting at second base, and they had all the prospects all around the infield and the outfield. And so I just sat on the bench and I watched for about a couple of weeks and then get a little playing time. And then all of a sudden, Roberto had in 4 games or 3 games, he had like 4 home runs, a grand slam, and they sent Roberto up and they sent Joey Cora back. And so I was still kind of in and out of the lineup a little bit. And then one thing happened that changed my whole foresight and the future for me. Was I was driving to the ballpark and I was driving this old raggedy 320i BMW and it stopped on the freeway. And I was like, oh my goodness. But I could see Cashman Field in the distance. And I said, you know what? I can't be late. So I just locked the door and ran to the stadium. And I got there. And so Smitty was our coach. He came out of the general manager's office or something. Steve Smith was our coach. And I run up there to the stadium and he's looking at me like, what are you sweating for? What are you doing? I said, well, my car stopped on the freeway and I didn't want to be late. And he just looked at me. And then we went on about our business. We got on the field and he walked up to me and he said, hey, you know what? I'm going to let you play some more. Well, I'm going to let you play a little bit more. And I started playing. At that time, I was hitting 240, got my average of 280. And then I got a call when we had gone from Vegas to Edmonton and I had to go back to Oakland because my grandmother, she had cancer and she was about to pass away. And family wanted me to come see her before she passed away. So I flew from Edmonton, flew to Oakland, saw her, flew back to Edmonton. On the way back to Edmonton, she passed away. And so when I got there, they told me she passed away, asked me, had I eaten? Of course not, because I only get $8 a day. How could I eat? And so I think Todd, the trainer was telling me, hey, going out there, Sonny Siebert's out there throwing batting practice. And so I'll go get you some Burger King and we'll go from there. So Sonny, he said, hey, as soon as I got out there, he said, hey, get in the box. I got in the box first swing. I didn't have a good swing. He said, hey, top part of the ball. Because that was my language. Top part of the ball. Mm-hmm. Go through the top part of the ball. So I went through the top part of the ball and I lit the stadium up. And from then on, from 280, I got all the way up to 353. And everybody in the organization was watching. And they told me when I got called back up that they knew I was coming.
Yeah, I mean, you hit 353 in AAA that year, but your OPS was 928. And you're not, I mean, so your slugging percentage was 522. I mean, you're Bip Roberts. You're not Greg Vaughn or somebody like that. But you were maybe, I don't want to make assumptions, but maybe Grandma kind of had a little bit.
I always say Grandma took that flight with me because when I was a kid in Little League, she would always say, and she called me Little Lily because I'm the third Leon. So she would say, Little Lily, if you hit a home run, I'm gonna give you this $1. And I would try, and I'd hit me a home run and run up the stands and get that $1, boy.
There you go. So you had some dollars coming to you then, I guess, after that. But hey, in '89, you played 117 games with the Padres and you hit 301. You're getting on base at 391. I wanted to ask you, on base percentage is much more talked about now. It's more, I guess, accepted to count a walk, not exactly like a hit, but more favorably to just get on base more and more. Was it something with your frame and the game you played, was getting on base super important to you?
It was, but I like to hit and I had a short swing. So most of the time when I would go after a pitch, I'd put it in play or hit it or foul it off or something like that. So, at that particular time, it was just see ball and hit ball. I wasn't really thinking about walks. I was thinking about how can I get on base, but I want to hit my way on base. A lot of guys now, they look for the walk. They have pretty good eyes up there at the plate, but my swing was conducive to putting the ball in play. And so every time I went after a pitch that I felt like I could hit, I put that ball in play. Not you wouldn't get a hit all the time, but my thing was as a leadoff hitter, you got to get on base a little more. But again, based on how I approached the game, being aggressive at the batter's box, there's a lot of times I wasn't even thinking about a walk.
Yeah. So 1990, you played a career high 149 games. You hit 309, and then you even had 46 stolen bases. So you started really bringing that part of your game out there. And then 91, you hit 281, but you still getting on base a lot. Tell me a little bit about those couple years, and certainly you're from California. You're playing in San Diego. Who wouldn't want to be down in San Diego? Did you feel like you were kind of home at that point? Was that kind of a place that you really enjoyed being?
Yeah, I felt like I was home in San Diego because Jack McKeon really treated me like one of his sons. He knew a lot of the stories about people in my family up in Oakland that I had to really look out for, and sometimes it could be detrimental to my mental state. But I would always just, try to just do what Jack McKeon wanted, because again, he was a guy who he spoke my language and he knew who I was, and so I just wanted to run through a brick wall for that guy. And so each time I had an opportunity to play for the San Diego Padres, I just tried to give you 150% what I could give you. And so understanding the game, learning the game, getting better at the game, having great teammates that made me better. Roberto Alomar made me better. Joe Carter made me better. Gary Templeton made me better. Tony Gwynn made me better. I mean, we just had guys on that team that just I get on base, Robbie let me steal, he get me over, and Joe would drive me in. I score over 100 runs. And so, but then the following season, they were all gone. And we had a brand new team, and you have to try to fit in. I tore my knee up, but I came back and hit 280 that year. But it was just a total different team, total different vibe. And just the mesh, I just didn't mesh well with that team.
When Alomar was still there, did you start playing other positions? Is that when you kind of started becoming more of a utility, not utility player coming off the bench, but where you were playing more positions? Because I knew you played some second, I think, and outfield with the Reds later.
Yeah. When I came back from AAA, down in AAA, I remember Jack Crow telling me, "Hey, I'm going to make you the best utility player that the Padres have ever had. So you're going to start playing a lot of different positions down here in AAA." And that's what I did. I just said, okay. And then when I got back there, Tim Flannery pulled me to the side. He said, "Hey, just accept it. If you accept it, then you will flourish at it." And so that's exactly what my mindset was. Again, I had a lot of good teammates around me that understood my position and where I was and the things that I had gone through, how I fought my way back. And they were just on my side at that time.
Absolutely. Well, hey, we're going to take a quick break here on Redleg Roundtable. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to Redleg Roundtable. So on December 8th, 1991, you were traded to the Cincinnati Reds in part for Randy Myers, a closer. He's one of the folk heroes of that 1990 Reds team. He was one of the nasty boys, which I want to get your thoughts on that before we go into your Reds career. You're in the NL West in San Diego. The Reds were in the NL West. Certainly that 1990 team will live in, just awesome memories for us Reds fans. But what was it like to face Charlton, Dibble, and Myers? What can you remember, especially that 1990 run?
Yeah, I remember I faced those guys in the minor leagues, so I knew all about them. I faced Randy Myers when he was in the Mets organization, and he was a starter. I faced Charlton in Double-A when he was with the Reds. And so I had faced him. I had never seen Dibble. I'd heard about Dibble, but I had never faced him until I got to the big leagues. And facing Dibble was like trying to hit a bowling ball. That's how heavy his fastball was. And he was a guy that threw 95 to 100 miles an hour. People say, "Do you guys have hard throwers in your day?" Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did. We had hard throwers, but they understood exactly how to use that miles per hour. But facing them in the big leagues, I remember facing Charlton when I think I got a double off of him, and then I stole third and I danced off third, and he didn't like that. So when I came to the plate the next time, he hit me in the ribs. I said, that's the nasty boys. Yeah. So when I got to the Reds and I asked him, why did you do that, man? I just was just being me. And he says, "Well, you was dancing around too much for me out there, and it was making me nervous."
Yeah, and he actually started quite a few games in '90, so you would have faced him in the order more than just one time as a reliever. Right. So the 1992 season, right up there with the best of your career. You hit 323. You get on base at a 393 clip. You had 45 RBI, 44 stolen bases. You hit 34 doubles. my memory was it felt like you hit a double almost every time you got up to the plate. Um, I guess as a whole, tell me about that first season in Cincinnati, and tell me a little bit about how it felt to be traded there. Because like we established, you're a California guy. You spent your whole career in San Diego to that point.
Yeah, I kind of felt that a trade was coming after the previous year where everybody was traded.
Yeah,
Myself, Benito, Santiago, and Andy Bennis. I think we were the last three left, and I felt like, wow, you traded everybody away. I guess I may be next. And when the opportunity came for them to get somebody like Randy Myers, they did trade me to Cincinnati. But I knew going over to Cincinnati, I was going to be playing for a good team with a lot of guys over there with a lot of talent. And Cincinnati is rich in the history when it comes to baseball. One of my idols and I grew up with and was able to he helped mentor me was Joe Morgan. So
absolutely. From the same area, right?
Yes, yep, same area. His house was right around the corner from high school I went to. So he would come up and work out with us, and I got a chance to really get to know Joe. And so going into Cincinnati, I thought, what, I need to go in here and represent because I'm representing Joe Morgan and the city of Oakland. And so I went in there with my hair on fire, just trying to give you everything I had. It turned out to be a great year. A couple things happened there that just really kind of magnified just having a good season, was making the All-Star team. And then, like I said, you run into a wall and you come back, you're not thinking that the home team's going to give you a standing ovation, but that happened. I just played with some good guys on that team. I remember having a lot of fun. Yeah,
we're going to talk about some of those guys here in a minute. Overall, what was it like to go play with Barry Larkin? I assume, similar to playing with a Tony Gwynn, just the professionalism, the getting ready and that kind of thing. But the amazing thing for us as Reds fans with Barry was at different times in his career, he could have been the best leadoff, second, third, or even fourth hitter on that Reds team. But what was it like playing with Barry and kind of, especially sometimes you're playing as a double play partner, going out there with an eventual Hall of Famer?
All the time, just smooth, just mentally smooth, physically smooth, just understanding who he was. And, I tell people all the time, you'll see a ball thrown to second and the infielder will scoop it or pick it, but he'll go up to come down. Barry used to go up. He would be up and come down and make that pick and make the tag. So there was something special about him that other guys couldn't do. And he could round a baseball, get in front of it, and still make the throw on the run and be as accurate as possible. And then at the plate, sometimes, that year, 92, he had a couple injuries. But when you look at his final stats, we literally had the same stats.
Yeah.
I said, wow, that was impressive because, there's a couple times where he had to miss a few games here and there, whatever it may be. But his numbers, he always put up numbers, and so one of the most consistent players I ever played with. People ask me all the time, who was the best shortstop you ever played with? I played with Omar Vizquel. I played with Gary Templeton. I played with Tony Fernandez. And I played with Barry Larkin. All around, Barry was the best shortstop I ever played with.
Well, and certainly, especially I'm 45 years old now. And so he was my whole career. Barry Larkin was the constant, my whole career, my whole upbringing. Barry Larkin was the constant. And we always felt like, all due respect to Ozzie Smith, at some point, Barry Larkin probably should have won a few more of those gold gloves that maybe Ozzie took home at the end of his career. But I'm with you there on the all-around player, don't you think? I mean, he's such an athlete, too.
Yeah, I mean, he was like one of the first shortstops to hit 20 home runs. He could steal bases. He hit for high average. He could use the opposite field. Like you said, he could hit from 1 to 4 if you want to put him in a 4 spot. And then he plays shortstop every day. And that's the hardest position to play because you got to go right on turf. I hope his hips are okay because he made a lot of plays out there that you have to be athletic to make, but you also have to use those legs awful lot.
So 92, you went to the All-Star game. I didn't look this up, but my memory serves. Was that in San Diego?
It was in San Diego.
There you go. So you get to go back as a kind of a conquering hero a little bit. What was that like?
Well, first of all, to even make the team was just I couldn't believe it. I just remember Bobby Cox asking Lou Piniella who was his all-star that year. And he said, Bip Roberts. And I just couldn't believe what I had just heard. And, now I'm going to make the all-star team. And it's back in San Diego where I was just traded from. And so you go back and you're thinking, well, I don't know how they're going to react because, you get traded. Now you're in a different uniform. I don't know how much they like the Reds or whatever, because I was always a Padre. But I think when they announced my name and then entire stadium stood up. It was surreal. I just
Yeah.
couldn't believe it.
Well, you were so fun to watch. I mean, there's numbers on a back of your baseball card, as they say, but there's also the great plays and the athleticism and the speed, and you played an exciting brand of baseball, that's for sure. Um, Now that team you had in '92, you mentioned Bobby Cox. The Braves had gone to the World Series in '91. The Reds, they couldn't defend their World Series in '91 because of so many injuries. And in '92, you guys were a little more healthy, than you had been in '91. Your Reds team went 90-72, and that's a good team, but that was before a wild card existed. You had to win the NL West to go to the playoffs. That was one of the better teams you probably played on, wasn't it? I mean, as far as top to bottom.
It really was. I mean, the Padres of, I think, 90, where we lost to the Giants by one game on the last day of the season. That was a very good team. But yeah, this Reds team was just outstanding when you look at it. You had like guys like Paul O'Neill in that lineup. You had Larkin in that lineup. We had Sabes, but Sabes I think he hurt his ankle or something. And so we missed Sabes a lot because he was just a tremendous third baseman and energetic and things like that. And, you had Hal Morris and you had, in center field, you had Davey was in center field. You had Joe Oliver behind the plate. You just had guys around that infield and outfield who had played on a high level, had won the World Series before. So they knew how to play and how to win. And that's one thing Lou Piniella always said. He said, we're going to win. That's one thing he always said in that clubhouse. We're going to win. And we went out there and we played like Lou's kids, as we like to say. We represented Lou very well that year.
Yeah. Now, I mentioned in '93, that team could have set up to be a really good team, but boy, injuries really hit you guys hard. And I know even like Kevin Mitchell was on that team and things like that. But let's go through then. You only spent the 2 years with the Reds. In '93, you still had a great year. Your batting average dipped a little bit. You still got on base though. And you played 83 games. What was your injury situation in '93? Did you get hurt quite a bit, or?
I tore my thumb up. I had to have
Okay.
reconstruction on my thumb. So that was a bummer. And my thing was I was going to be a free agent after that year, and it was just a bad year, mentally and physically. I think it really started the year before in arbitration, where I was able to win my case, but it put my number at a point to where I couldn't be offered or wouldn't be offered a multi-year deal, and that kind of sullied me a little bit because I was kind of happy being in Cincinnati and understanding what was in front of me. I love wearing that red because that was my high school colors, and the red was always my favorite color. And then when I got hurt, it just kind of broke my spirit. It really did, because it's nothing I could do about it. Play with one thumb, it just wasn't going to work. And a lot of people at that time, they were a little upset at me. But sometimes you have to do what you have to do. And I had come from a point in my career where I had to fight for everything I got. So I never let what people say deter me from doing what I needed to do. But after the '93 season, I went back to San Diego.
Yeah, we'll get to that in just a minute. But so you only go 73 and 89 in '93, and that was a tough deal. As a local hero, Tony Perez had been, in the Big Red Machine and made the Hall of Fame, and here he was given 44 games as manager before they let him go.
Yeah.
That had to be kind of tough as a player to kind of be a part of and see that happen.
Well, I felt like I was a part of him not having success by not being on the field.
Yeah.
So when I looked in the mirror, I said, "Wow, I have a lot to do with that." And to this day, I just wish I could have been healthy. I felt like had I been healthy, I could at least did my part. But I think the first time I dove into first base, I jammed my wrist, and so that was the first injury, and that was that same hand that I ended up tearing a thumb on. So I don't know if it was that I hurt it then, or I know when I slid into second base and Atlanta stole a base, I popped it. And I popped it back into place, but the ligament was already gone. So
Yeah,
I
that's
just
bad.
looked at it like, when you're hurt and you can't help, and then your manager gets fired, you have to shoulder some of that blame.
Yeah, but at the same time, baseball's the ultimate team game, and while you would have definitely helped, it's tough to put it all on you. But back to '92, just a moment. You were named Reds team MVP. We mentioned you made the All-Star team. You were 8th in the National League in MVP voting in 1992. That's amazing. And tell me a little bit about that stretch you had of 10 consecutive base hits.
Wow, that wow, I couldn't believe what was happening. Now, remember I think in one of those games, I was 0 for 2, and then the rains came.
Okay.
So I washed that game away, and I got a chance to keep that streak going, and I was able to keep it going. But it was one of those streaks where I don't even think I thought one time at the plate. I just think I went up there and I saw the ball and I just put the right swing on it, and things were just falling in the outfield for me. I think the only time I thought was after I got the 10 hits. I walked and then I came up and swung at the first pitch. That was the only time I thought, and that was the wrong time because I should have just continued to not think, but go up there and hit the ball hard. Because after I got out and the 10 for 10 was over, the next at bat I came up and I hit a rocket. And I was thinking, see, that's just how baseball goes. When you don't think you can have success, when you start thinking, that's when you kind of compromise the things that could happen for you.
Well, and as someone who tries to play golf, I know even in golf, you need to do the preparation beforehand so you know what to do without thinking, right?
Yeah,
and that's a huge part of your baseball swing as well. If you don't mind, let's talk a little bit about some of those teammates. We already mentioned Barry Larkin. You mentioned Sabo was hurt quite a bit. What was he like as a teammate? And you'd played against him so much also. He was 1988 Rookie of the Year. He'd been in the league about the same time you had.
Yeah. I really admired how he went about playing the game because he was a mental guy. He played with a lot of energy and he was fierce out there. And I used to watch him from the other side, making diving plays at third, getting up and throwing guys out. And he just, when he went in, he just seemed like he was a quiet, but he had a lot of energy within that. And you just knew that he was like one of those guys that you would want to play with because he's that type of guy when he got hot or when he out there making plays, he lifts a team. And I just thought that, man, we were missing that year. Because he hurt his ankle and it just didn't get better. But he would try to get back, but it was just one of those years, it was one of those years that, you wish you had him because we were right there with the Braves. And I know he always came up with big hits. And sometimes, you just wish certain things and it just doesn't turn out that way.
Were you there when he had the cork bat situation?
No, I wasn't there. I wasn't.
There was always these rumors about whose bat was it. And let me see. It was actually not till 1996 when he'd come back with the team. It was a funny there was a rumor that it was a prank type situation, a batting practice bat by somebody else like Hal Morris or somebody, and maybe accidentally used it in the game. I don't know. You mentioned fierce competitors. Paul O'Neill, and he had better years once he got to New York, and I know Lou always kind of platooned him maybe a little more than he wanted, obviously, but what was Paul O'Neill like as a teammate?
Always encouraging, always kind of mellow with his tone, never loud or boisterous, always rooting for his teammates, but always striving to be the best. He had that fire in him too, but it was a quiet thing. Sometimes you could see it come out a little bit.
Yeah.
I never heard him on the bench, yelling and screaming like some of us would, but he always was in the ball game, trying to do his best, trying to give Lou what he wanted. And sometimes he just couldn't live up sometimes to what Lou wanted, but he went out there to play hard every day and he was a winner.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You had a very young Reggie Sanders on that team. He played 116 games. He hit 270, cracked 12 homers. Did you ever find yourself as kind of the older guy trying to help a younger guy like Reggie out or passing on kind of what Gary Templeton had done for you?
Well, in 92, I think we stayed at the same hotel. And so I got a chance to talk to Reggie a lot and just be able to be around him and understand where he was from. I think he was from Florence, South Carolina.
That's right.
And so he was always that young kid with all this talent, and you could see it. You could see all the speed, you could see the power, you could see the arm, just like, wow, man. And so, you just wanted to have him settle down and just find himself, find his niche. What I remember most about was the one game against Houston when I think they hit Reggie on purpose and Dibble and Glenn Braggs ran out the dugout towards the mound, and they were taking care of this young man. He said, "We got you, buddy. Don't you worry about that. If somebody hits you and tries to hurt you, we'll take care of that." So I think Reggie was just liked by everybody on the team because, again, he's from Florence, South Carolina. He's very, very respectable as far as he respects his elders. He was always there with a smile. And I forget what he had this saying that I can't remember right now, but it was always something that was very encouraging, especially from a young player.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. I don't want the 2024 version of Glenn Braggs charging after me, let alone 1992. I've seen Glenn Braggs on Instagram.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're still in touch with Glenn, but my goodness, he is he is a physical specimen, that's for sure.
He is, and I see those posts all the time, and I go, man, this guy's not aging, but he's getting bigger and bigger. I mean,
yeah, that's right.
Muscles is concerned.
You had some really good starting pitchers on that staff. Talk a little bit about Jose Rio and Greg Swindell, and then even the late Tom Browning. He passed away about 1.5 years ago.
Yeah. I was sad to hear when Tommy passed away. You know, it was another shock to the system when you see something like that happen to a guy who's especially still so young in life. Playing with Swindell, I really enjoyed that. We had our own special handshake, and we came over at the same time, both of us. And when we came in, we had to come into Cincinnati to have our physicals and things like that. And so got a chance to know him and know him well. We stay in contact from time to time, just, saying hello to each other. Dwayne Henry, the same thing. But Rio was just special, man. He was a special guy when it comes to the best slider I've ever seen. The late break on it, where he could throw it outside and hit that outside corner. You give up on it and he strike you out looking. And then he had a good fastball that he didn't mind throwing it inside because he understood that one part of the plate is mine, and then I'll let you have a little bit of the rest of the plate. But he was just one who could, from both sides of the plate, would just mix in a fastball with a good slider. Now he had a little funny thing. He had in his locker, he had some snake oil that he would put on his elbow. I said, did that really work? Or is that just you? But he would always put that snake oil on that arm.
There was a time, and I specifically remember 1998 because he had those injuries, right? 1995 ended very prematurely for him, and I don't think he pitched again until he tried to come back in 99 as a reliever at that point. But there was a time as of 1998 where he had the best ERA in the entire National League in the 90s.
Yeah.
You're talking Maddox and Glavine and Smoltz and all those guys. And my goodness, yes, he was something else. In fact, that year in 92, he went 15-10, 211 innings with a 2.56 ERA.
Yeah.
So he was on it.
Yeah.
And of course, Swindell had a 2.7 ERA that year too. So
yeah.
And Swindell was definitely a factor. Now, you were on the team on September 17th, 1992, when Rob Dibble and Lou Piniella squared off in the clubhouse. Do you remember Hal McCoy, the writer?
I do.
So I had Hal on, and he talked about how Hal was the reason that happened, because Hal went and Lou had told him, he told me his arm was hurt, and he came back and said, "What's wrong with your arm?" He says, "I never said my arm was hurt." And then it erupted, and of course it got caught on camera for the local media to kind of film it. You weren't in the path of Hurricane Lou, were you, in that situation?
No, most of us had, the game was just ending, so most of us were still trying to get back into our street clothes when this happened. And I just remember Lou coming through saying some things and Dibble saying some things, and next thing you know, they're having a heated, more than a heated discussion. They're having some physicalities going on. And I just remember the funniest thing was when I looked over there, Barry Larkin had on the towel, and he was trying to reach over, and we kept saying, "I sure hope the towel don't fall off, bro, because you're on camera right
now." That's right. That's right. Well, and certainly that was kind of, like I said, you were right with the Braves that year, and I know you ended up with the 90 wins, which is very respectable. But the Braves, I remember there was a series later in the year. They went 98-64, so they ended up 8 games ahead of you. There was a series in like August probably, or very, very early September, and it was kind of like, well, this is do or die right here, and the Braves just kind of had your number. But man, 90-win season these days would get you, you're smack dab in the playoffs, hoping to make a run to the World Series. So
the Braves were hot.
Yeah,
They
they
would
were.
game the second half, and it seemed like every time we would lose, they would win, and so
Mhm.
that's how they ran out that 8-game lead on us because we'd lose a game and they would win, and they would just win. They would just not lose, and they had a habit of coming back after the seventh inning. They just, for some reason, they had a knack, and those guys would bear down, especially in Atlanta. They would bear down after that seventh inning, and they would find a way to win. And we happened to be on the other end of a couple of those games.
Right. And you think about the starters, their starters, certainly you had good starters too, but their starters kept them in games, right? And then the late lightning. And then just to recap 93, I got a little ahead of myself there, but you only played in 83 games. Roberto Kelly had come over um, for Paul O'Neill from the Yankees. He only got to play in 78 games that year. Barry Larkin played in 100 games, and Kevin Mitchell, the big slugger addition, he only played in 93 games. Rio was his usually great self, but pretty much everybody else kind of had a bit of a down year or an injury plagued year. And you mentioned already that it was kind of a tough deal. Um, Re-signing with the Padres, that was that an easy decision for you to get back to where you started in the big leagues?
Yeah, pretty much because I lived in San Diego, and my agent at the time was saying, "Hey, go down there and talk to Boch and see if you can, kind of work yourself back into playing ball, but also you can get back home to San Diego." And I went and had a meeting with Bochy, and he said, "Hey, yeah, you know what? Let's do this." And so that's how I got back to San Diego. I didn't even have an agent negotiate that. I just had played with Boch. I've been knowing Boch since '86, where I was a rookie. He was a veteran. We did the AAA thing together. He was a coach manager, a player manager, and then he became manager. And so I knew Boch very well, and I figured, hey, you know what? I'd like to go play with somebody that knows me, that
Mm-hmm.
understands me, and that's not going to hold certain things against me on certain days. And so Boch was always, that guy that I could go to and talk to and say, hey, man, listen, man, this is going on today. He said, you'll be all right. Just keep going. And so, you always needed that encouragement from your manager. And that's what Lou Piniella was to me as well. He encouraged me all the time to go out there and just be the best player that I could be.
Well, people know Lou Piniella as a manager, but he had a pretty good major league career himself, so he kind of knew where you were coming from. I would assume, especially he was a second baseman, I believe, and played there. I remember. We'll let you go here in a few minutes. I remember that '97 season. You'd been traded to the Indians. I was actually a freshman at Ohio State, and so as a Reds fan, I tell you that mid '90s range here in Columbus was tough because the some of the cable networks or state, if you had cable, they wouldn't put both teams on like they do now. That now they've got the Northern and the Southern Fox Sports or Bally Sports as it is now.
Mhm.
But back then the cable system would decide. And there when in 94, 95, 96, when the Indians got really good, I had to sit at my mom's and just watch the Indians instead of my Reds. And that made me a little bitter. And so I wasn't really rooting for you in 97, but I always loved to see you come up and play, in my memories of you playing for the Reds. So, you came within an eyelash of winning that World Series, didn't you?
Yeah. That was a great team too. Wow. That was a year, '97. I thought that after the season with the Royals that I needed to go home because I had my oldest son and two of my nephews in a near fatal car accident, and I couldn't get home. And so
Mm.
that was something that when I did get to fly back to Oakland, I had to fly to San Diego, fly back to Oakland, fly to San Diego, fly back to Oakland, Seattle, fly back to San Diego. And so I was worn out mentally. And then I get back to Kansas City and they go, hey, you've been traded. I said, what? Traded where? And they told me where I was going. I said, man, this is one of those things where I'm gonna be on autopilot because mentally I'm already done. But
Mm-hmm.
I was able to stay with David Justice and talk with him about some things and try to get some of my energy back. And you just had to fight through it. I just fought through that whole time knowing that I should be at home because my
Sure.
son had been in a coma and I needed to be home to get him to all of his doctor's appointments, but I was away playing ball. And so I was just torn, man. It was tough. After games, I think I would go to my room at David's house and I think I would just cry because I was just
Yeah.
like, man, I need to be at home, bro. And he was just like, man, we only got so much to go. We'll get to the finish line. But it was I think that was the toughest time of my career.
I
Just
bet.
knowing I should be at home.
Yeah, and you acquitted yourself well, and like I said, you played all the way through the World Series there. And boy, people don't understand sometimes. They think, well, you're a famous athlete, and you make money and all this stuff, but boy, you've got the family obligations too. I talked to Scott Williamson. He was the Reds Rookie
Yeah.
of the Year in '99, and he
Hmm.
got traded to the Red Sox in '03 at the trade deadline. And here, his wife was in a bad state about they were giving birth to their child, and there were some complications. And he talked about how even the folks in Boston told him, like Theo Epstein said, you take your time. And he got to be there for the birth of his child and through some of the harder parts there. And then after a few more days, he headed off to Boston. But then his mind's back there, right? And in
Yeah.
Cincinnati where the baby was born and all that. So there's a real human aspect to, even though you were, like I said, a very exciting baseball player to watch on TV and in person and at a big stadium. But wanted to talk to you a little bit about you got to finish in Oakland there in '98, but tell me a little bit about now. Are you on pregame, postgame? Is that what you're doing for the
Yeah.
TV broadcast?
Yeah, I'm doing A's pregame, postgame. That's what I do as far as still being around the game of baseball. I do a lot of camps around the area. But what I've been doing lately is I'm now part of the District Attorneys Coalition. So we have a diversion program for those who may get in some trouble and have the ability to get out of trouble if they come through my program. And so that's a lot of what we've been doing, clearing out encampments, getting homeless into sheltering, housing, getting them into programs, getting them back on their feet, and getting them jobs so that they can support themselves. So just doing a lot up here in this community. Oakland right now is one of the communities that's got a lot of crime going on. People right now are trying to push me to run for the mayor of Oakland. I'm still undecided on that. But, I've talked to a lot of people who were the problem at the time, have created the problem, and need to go back to fix the problem. So we're doing a lot up here in Oakland. Yeah, doing A stuff, but the community is more important than that.
Yeah, and I guess that was my next question before I even understood all that about you. That's awesome, by the way. But this whole Oakland A's situation, where apparently the next couple of years they'll be in Sacramento, and the whole thing's not even, I don't think, decided yet about Las Vegas completely. How tough is that to watch, especially given that you're from there?
Sad days right now. It really is. And, when you have no control over something, you can't worry about it. So, each game that ticks and goes by, you're thinking we're getting closer and closer to the end. I just wish that both sides had really come to the table wanting to stay in Oakland.
Yeah.
I think that when you look at it from each side, there was some things in there that was divisive. And I think it was based on some people not really understanding how sports is important to a community. And then some people realizing that, you're not going to be able to get everything. And you have to kind of, give something to get something. And so I just think that both sides, there was a stalemate. I still believe that there's a chance that they could come back. I think there's a poison. I think there's a poison pill in Las Vegas, but I also don't think they want to stay in Sacramento for 4 years. I think that
Right. Yeah.
somewhere behind there, Salt Lake City. That's something else that I hear. But I also think that if you have the right mayor and you have the right council, speaking to Mr. Fisher, he may come back. So hopefully I can get in there before he leaves.
I got to visit the Coliseum back in 2019. My college roommate and I go to different ballparks. The Reds were playing Oakland, and then they went across the bay and played in San Fran. So we went and did both, and that was pre-pandemic. So some things have changed, I suppose, since 2020. But in 2019, there was some hope, and this is with the team that was staying. You had the Raiders already kind of going, and I know that the Warriors went across the bay as well, but my goodness, it's just tough to watch, and you feel terrible. Then it's one of the worst stadiums I've been in. Right, I've been in most of them,
Yeah.
and it certainly needs work or it needs a new one. But boy, I feel terrible for the true fans of Oakland, of the A's. That's going to be tough if it does come to fruition permanently.
Yeah, yeah. And I think a lot of hardworking men and women have been laid off already, even the
Mm.
grounds crew. Everybody's been told who's staying and who's going. And so a lot of the bad news has already been broken to those who it's really going to affect. And I'm just sad to see this because baseball has been here since 1968. I mean, we grew up here. Because of the A's, we've had almost 50 guys play in the big leagues because of that dream. When the A's came here, the dream we all had. And I mean, it goes from Frank Robinson and Vada Pinson and Kurt Flood and Joe Morgan. And then it comes down to Ricky Henderson, Dave Stewart, myself, Gary Pettis, and Lloyd Mosby, and so many more that are in between that. And the dream was when the A's got here was to play on that field, do what we can to get to that field. We did that. And now to see that the dreams that we had as far as being an Oakland A and what spurred us to become big league ball players is now leaving town.
Well, Bip, thanks so much for your time. And if you decide to run for mayor and Redleg Roundtable out here in Ohio can do anything for you, we'll definitely put out the bat signal for any Reds fans in the Bay Area to vote for Bip. And that would be pretty neat to see, especially if you put your mind to it and tried to compromise on some way to get those A's either back or even to stay. But certainly as of now, it doesn't look too good. But thanks again for taking the time today. I really appreciate you.
Well, Seth, thank you. And thank you for having me on Red's Roundtable, buddy. I appreciate that.
All right. Well, hang on just one moment. We'll get out of here on the outro and have a great day.
All right. You too. You too.